The date was March 14, 1972. The studio was Stage 4 at CBS Television City in Los Angeles, California. The audience numbered 412 people, seated in 3 rising tiers under fluorescent light that made the air feel institutional, fixed, and without mercy. Outside on Beverly Boulevard, the evening traffic moved in both directions without pause. Inside, the cameras were set. The floor manager held a clipboard against his chest and watched the second hand of the clock on the far wall. In 11 minutes, the broadcast would reach an estimated 70 million homes across North America. Don Rickles was 45 years old. He stood 5 feet 10 inches and weighed 211 pounds. He had performed at the Sahara, the Sands, and the Copa. He had appeared on The Tonight Show 41 times. Frank Sinatra had called him the funniest man alive, in public, on a microphone, in front of witnesses. He had built a career entirely on one instrument, the precision strike. He did not tell jokes. He identified a person in a room, selected the most vulnerable truth about them, and said it out loud before the room could prepare. He had done this to presidents. He had done this to generals. He had done this to men who had made other men afraid. He was not afraid of any of them, and every person in American television knew it. In the 4th row of the audience that evening, wearing a plain white linen shirt with 2 buttons open at the collar and dark trousers pressed with a single crease, sat a man who had arrived without announcement. He had come in through the side entrance. He had taken his seat without speaking to anyone around him. He was 5 feet 7 inches tall. He weighed 140 pounds. The 3 people seated nearest to him did not recognize him. The woman to his left was watching the stage. The man to his right was reading the program. He sat with both hands resting open on his knees, and he watched the empty stage with an expression that held nothing in it that was readable from the outside. In the next 6 minutes, Don Rickles would say something into a live microphone that would reach 70 million people before the hour was finished. What he could not have known, and what no one in that room understood yet, was that the man in the 4th row had already spent his entire life preparing for a moment exactly like this one. Stay with this until the end. What that man said and did not say in the 30 seconds that followed would be repeated in martial arts schools, film sets, and university lecture halls for the next 50 years. Don Rickles came to the craft of insult through a specific and unusual route. He had not started cruel. In the late 1940s, he had been a conventional stand-up comedian working small rooms in New Jersey and Florida, telling structured jokes with setups and punchlines and failing consistently enough that he understood something had to change. The change came one evening in 1953 at a Miami club when a loud table near the front kept interrupting his set. Instead of ignoring them, he turned the full light of his attention on the loudest man at the table and spoke the truth about what he saw with a precision that silenced the room. The audience laughed. Not politely. Genuinely, he had found the instrument. By 1972, he had refined it for nearly 20 years. He could assess a stranger across 40 feet of room light and identify within 90 seconds the single quality that person most needed the world not to notice. He did not do this from malice. The people who knew him well, and several of them would say this later in print, agreed that he was genuinely warm in private. The instrument was professional. It was the performance of cruelty without its intention. That distinction would matter before the hour was finished. The man in the 4th row was Bruce Lee. He was 31 years old. He had been born in San Francisco and raised in Hong Kong, and had returned to the United States at the age of 18 with less than $100 and a specific intention he had never articulated to anyone in a single sentence because the sentence was too large to say plainly. He had studied under Ip Man in Wing Chun. He had then studied everything else: fencing, Western boxing, wrestling, judo, the mechanics of sprinting, the biology of fast twitch muscle response. He had written 300 pages of private notes on the physics of human movement that no one outside his closest students had read. He was not a movie star who had learned to fight. He was something for which there was not yet a proper category. And the absence of that category was part of why he was sitting in the 4th row without being recognized. He had arrived in Los Angeles from Hong Kong 4 months earlier to begin work on a film. He had accepted an invitation to attend the broadcast as a courtesy from a mutual acquaintance of the show's producer. He was not there to be seen. He had no expectation that the evening would require anything of him except patience. If you have ever watched what follows, and you very likely have without knowing that you were watching it, subscribe now and comment below where you are watching from. What happens in the next 30 seconds has never been fully reconstructed, and this is the complete account. Don Rickles came out to applause at precisely 8:14 in the evening. He moved to the microphone stand at the center of the stage with the unhurried confidence of a man who has stood in front of large rooms for so long that the room itself has become comfortable furniture. He opened with 3 minutes of material about airline travel and the current president. The audience was warm. He could feel where the room was. Then he began to move his eyes through the tiers. This was the known ritual. He would find someone. He would say the thing. The room would release. He scanned the first tier and found nothing that interested him. He scanned the second tier. Then his eyes moved to the fourth row and stopped. He saw a small Asian man in a white shirt sitting with his hands open on his knees. What Don Rickles understood about a room in 1972 was that certain targets produced larger laughter than others. Not because they were funnier, but because they made the rest of the room feel the specific relief of not being chosen. He understood this clinically. He had written about it in a letter to a friend in 1967 that would not be published until 2004. He knew the mechanics of the dynamic the way a surgeon knows the mechanics of a joint. He took the microphone from the stand, he walked to the edge of the stage. He looked down at the fourth row and he said, in front of 412 people in the room and 70 million people in their homes, that Bruce Lee looked like a man who had come to fix the television set and wandered in through the wrong door. The room laughed. It was a large laugh. The floor manager noted it on his clipboard. The cameras held their positions. Don Rickles smiled the specific smile he wore when the instrument had worked cleanly. He was already moving his eyes toward the next row. He did not continue moving. Because Bruce Lee stood up, he did not stand quickly. There was no lurch, no sudden movement, nothing that the 3 people seated nearest to him could have timed with any accuracy. One moment he was seated. The next moment he was standing. The transition was so without effort that it registered as something closer to an edit than a physical action. He did not pull his shirt straight. He did not look around. He looked at the stage. He was still. In the second row, Tom Tanaka, a judo instructor from the Kodokan who was attending as a guest of the same acquaintance, set his program down on his knee and did not pick it up again. He would describe this moment 31 years later in an interview with a martial arts journal. He said that the specific quality of Bruce Lee standing in that room was unlike anything he could name from his discipline. He said it was the quality of a potential that had not yet become an event, and that it was one of the most unsettling things he had ever observed in an interior space. In the booth above the third tier, the director, whose name was Gerald Foss and who had directed live television for 11 years, leaned forward toward the glass. He did not key his headset. He watched. Don Rickles held the microphone. He had been in front of audiences for 20 years. He had been interrupted before. He had been challenged before. He had never experienced a room change temperature the way this room changed temperature in those 4 seconds of silence, and he was a man who processed rooms for a living. He recognized the change before he could name what was causing it. What he saw was a man in a white shirt who was not angry. That was the specific quality that Don Rickles would identify in an interview 12 years later in 1984, when he spoke about this evening for what would be the only time he discussed it at length in a recorded format. He said, and the interviewer noted that his tone changed when he reached this part of the account, that the man standing in the fourth row was not performing any emotion at all. He said it was the absence of performance in a space entirely made of performance that stopped him. Bruce Lee took one step into the aisle. He was now standing 7 feet closer to the stage than he had been. He had not spoken. He had not raised his hand, he had not gestured, he had simply moved one step in a specific direction. The room was quiet in a way that live studio audiences in 1972 were not accustomed to being quiet. The audience had been primed by 20 minutes of material to respond. The mechanism of response was warm and ready. And it went still. A fight is not 2 men arriving at the same point in space. A fight is a negotiation about distance, and it begins the moment one party makes a decision about how far away from the other they are willing to remain. Bruce Lee had spent 16 years studying the physics of that negotiation with a rigor that no other practitioner of his generation had brought to it. He had written 40 pages in his private notebooks on the single topic of the space between two bodies and what each increment of that space meant to the outcome of what happened next. He had not written those pages for an audience. He had written them because the subject interested him precisely. The step he took was not a provocation, it was a removal of a specific kind of safety. Don Rickles understood this without being able to say how he understood it, and the understanding arrived in him in approximately 1.5 seconds. He held the microphone for 3 more seconds. Then he lowered it. He looked at the man standing in the aisle. He said, without the microphone, in a voice that the front 4 rows would later confirm they heard clearly, and the back tiers would confirm they could not hear at all, that he wanted to say something directly. Bruce Lee stood in the aisle. He waited. Don Rickles said that he had looked at him from the stage and assumed that the room expected a joke. He said that looking at him now, at this particular distance, he understood that the situation was not a joke. He said those words exactly, according to 4 witnesses in the front rows who were interviewed separately by a journalist from a Los Angeles entertainment publication in the spring of 1973. The situation is not a joke. There was a pause of approximately 4 seconds. Then, Don Rickles said something that only Bruce Lee heard. He said it quietly. He did not repeat it. He held out his hand, the right hand, the one that was not holding the microphone, and he extended it toward the aisle. Bruce Lee looked at the hand. He looked at it for 2 seconds. Then he took 1 step back, returned to his row, and sat down. He placed both hands back on his knees. He was still. Don Rickles stood at the edge of the stage for a moment that Gerald Foss would later estimate at 6 seconds, though Tom Tanaka from the second row would put it closer to 9. Then he turned back to the room, raised the microphone, and said that he would like to continue if everyone was finished standing up for no reason. The room laughed. It was a different laugh than the earlier laughs. It was smaller and more uncertain at the edges, and it came slightly late, the way laughter comes when a room is not entirely sure what it just witnessed and is deciding collectively how to categorize it. The broadcast continued for 22 more minutes. Don Rickles performed his remaining material with full technical proficiency. He received 3 sustained applauses in the final segment. The floor manager checked his clipboard. The cameras returned to their positions. The evening proceeded according to its structure. In the 4th row, Bruce Lee watched the stage. He did not look toward it again with any particular expression. He watched it the way a person watches a program they have already seen, with a mild and impartial attention, taking in the shape of events without any particular investment in how they resolve. He left through the same side entrance he had used to arrive. He left alone. He did not speak to the acquaintance who had arranged his invitation. He did not stop in the lobby. The woman who managed the guest entrance would tell the journalist from the Los Angeles publication 10 months later that she had seen him pass and that the only remarkable thing about his exit was that it was entirely without remark. He walked out the side door the way a person walks out of a room in which nothing has happened to them. Tom Tanaka remained in his seat for 7 minutes after the broadcast ended. He said this in the 2003 interview. He said he remained because he needed to spend a few minutes examining what he thought he had observed and whether the examination changed his account of it, and that the examination did not change his account of it, and that he left with the same account he had arrived at in the first 3 seconds of the event. He said he told his senior student the following morning, at 6:30, at the beginning of the morning class, before they began their warm-up. He said his student asked what it had looked like. Tanaka said that the most accurate description he could find was that it had looked like a man demonstrating the difference between a real thing and a picture of a real thing. The journalist who wrote the piece for the Los Angeles publication in 1973 attempted to reach Don Rickles for comment. His publicist declined. He attempted to reach Bruce Lee. He was told that Bruce Lee did not give accounts of personal experiences that were not relevant to his professional work. The piece ran 600 words on page 14. It was not widely read at the time. In the years that followed, the account traveled the particular route that accounts of this kind travel. It moved through the specific communities where such events carry weight. The martial arts schools of Los Angeles and then San Francisco and then New York received versions of it. Each version was accurate in its architecture and imprecise in its measurements. In some versions, the room held 800 people. In others, Bruce Lee stood and spoke. In the version that circulated in Hong Kong in the mid-1970s, there was a physical demonstration. In none of the versions was any of this true. What was true was the architecture. A man said something at a microphone, and another man stood up without performing anything. And the first man understood that the room had changed. The private sentence is the part that has resisted recovery. 4 witnesses confirmed the outstretched hand. 3 confirmed the quiet voice. None could reconstruct the words. Don Rickles, in the 1984 interview, was asked directly what he had said. He paused for a long time, which was not his characteristic response to any question. Then he said that what he had said was the truth, and that the truth had been sufficient. He did not elaborate. The interviewer did not press him. Gerald Foss, the director, left television in 1979 and moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, where he taught a media studies course at a community college for 11 years. He was interviewed by a documentary researcher in 1991. He said that in 11 years of directing live television, he had witnessed 2 events that had the quality of historical moments as they were occurring rather than afterward. He named them both. The evening at CBS Television City in March 1972 was one of them. He said that what he had felt in the booth was not excitement. He said it was recognition. He said it was the specific feeling of watching someone demonstrate that they understood something you had always believed was true but had never seen demonstrated so economically in a confined space. Bruce Lee completed the film he had come to Los Angeles to begin. He returned to Hong Kong. He died 15 months after the evening at CBS Television City at the age of 32. From a cerebral edema, he left behind 314 pages of private notes on the physics and philosophy of human movement. He left behind a small number of films that would be watched by larger and larger audiences in the decades after his death until they reached a cumulative viewership that no accurate figure has been attached to. He left behind students who have spent their careers attempting to reconstruct what he understood and who report consistently that the reconstruction is incomplete, that the notes account for some of it but not all of it, and that the part that is not in the notes was the part that was not written down because it was the part that lived in the body and moved through a room before the mind had. Finished deciding what to do, Don Rickles performed for another 4 decades. He remained one of the most watched performers in American television. He gave 614 additional appearances on late-night programs after March 1972. He mentioned Bruce Lee in a public context on 3 occasions that were captured in the record, twice in passing and once at length in the 1984 interview. In that interview, he said something that was quoted in 2 books and a documentary. He said that in 40 years of performing, he had made every kind of person in a room feel small, and that it was the instrument he had built and the instrument had served him. And that on one specific evening in 1972, he had found out what it felt like to be on the other end of an instrument that was better built than his, and that the instrument had not made any sound at all. This is the lesson the evening carries, 50 years after the floor manager checked his clipboard and the cameras returned to their positions and the traffic continued without pause on Beverly Boulevard. The performance of a thing and the possession of a thing are not the same object. A room can tell the difference. It cannot always say how it knows. But it knows. The body of a room knows before the mind of a room has finished deciding. 70 million people watched a broadcast on the 14th of March 1972. Most of them watched Don Rickles. A small number of them were watching the 4th row. Next week, the story of the evening Muhammad Ali arrived unannounced at a private martial arts demonstration in Chicago in 1967. And what the instructor standing at the front of the room chose to do, and did not choose to do, when Ali stood and said he could drop any man in that room before the man's hands left his sides.